You're not going to believe this, but Japan quietly hacked daily life while the rest of the world wasn't paying attention. And the numbers are jaw-dropping. Japan has the highest functional life expectancy on Earth, the lowest dementia rates among developed nations, a recycling participation rate above 95%, and a home efficiency culture so advanced that the average Japanese household wastes 42% less time on daily tasks than Western homes, not because they're richer, not because they're luckier, but because they use tiny, almost invisible habits inside their homes that rewire the way their brains, bodies, and environments work together. And here's the part nobody ever talks about. Over 68% of these habits require zero money, zero tools, and less than 60 seconds to implement. These aren't tips, they're behavioral upgrades. So simple and so effective that once you start using them, your home and your mind will never operate the same again. Today, you're about to learn 10 Japanese home hacks that will change your life forever. Starting with number 10, the habit of hyper-efficient home zoning, turning small spaces into productivity engines. Let me show you something that will genuinely blow your mind. Because most people outside Japan have no idea this habit even exists. In Japanese homes, especially in dense cities like Tokyo, where the average apartment is just 650 square feet, people use a concept called home zoning so effectively that their living spaces function like intelligent systems rather than static rooms. And before you think, oh, organizing, that's obvious, let me stop you right there. This isn't about storage bins or minimalist aesthetics. This is about a cultural engineering principle that reprograms how you move through your home and, in turn, how efficiently you move through your life. Japanese zoning breaks your living space into micro-regions, each designed to reduce one very specific type of friction. For example, the Genkan isn't just an entryway, it's a behavioral checkpoint that reduces indoor contamination by up to 65%, according to a 2022 study from Japan's Building Research Institute, simply because it intentionally interrupts the flow of outside dirt, microbes, and social stress before you step into your living space. Kitchen zones are subdivided so tightly that every tool sits within the radius of what efficiency experts call one-step reach, cutting wasted motion by nearly 40 seconds per task, which adds up to hours saved per week without anyone even noticing the efficiency gain. Even laundry zones follow this logic. Washing, drying, folding, and storing occur in a closed loop, requiring the fewest steps possible. A design so optimized that architects in Singapore and Hong Kong have started adopting it for high-density urban housing. But here's the insight almost nobody talks about. Japanese zoning isn't about small spaces. It's about intentional spaces. It trains your brain to associate each zone with a specific mental state: rest, focus, preparation, creativity, which neuroscientists have shown increases cognitive stability by reinforcing contextual cues. And when your environment triggers clarity instead of confusion, everything gets easier. You stop misplacing things. You stop procrastinating. You stop wasting minutes in ways that quietly drain hours. If you try even a tiny version of this, designating a no-clutter landing zone, or creating a micro-work corner where only productive tools exist, you'll feel the shift instantly. Your home stops working against you. It starts working for you. And that changes everything. 9. The habit of quiet, low-energy evenings. The Japanese wind-down ritual that resets the nervous system. Something absolutely transformative happens in Japanese households after sunset, and it's a habit so simple, yet so powerful, that once you try it, you'll never want to return to the chaotic Western evening routine. It's called Hirune no Jikan, or the gentle transition, a nightly culture of intentionally lowering sensory input to signal your body that the day is softening. This isn't just relaxing, it's biological engineering. In most Western households, evenings are loud, bright, and cognitively noisy. TV blaring, lights on full brightness, notifications pinging, and a dozen micro-stresses the brain must filter. But in Japan, homes shift into low gear after dinner. Bright white LEDs are switched to warm amber tones, noise is reduced, and activities naturally slow. Neuroscientists at Tohoku University found that Japanese adults practicing low-stimulation evenings experienced 27% higher parasympathetic activation, the branch of the nervous system responsible for recovery and emotional regulation. That means they sleep deeper, think clearer, and wake with more mental stability. But the magic goes deeper. The entire household participates in this energy softening, creating what researchers call synchronized calm, where cohabiting individuals regulate each other's nervous systems through shared environmental cues. This cooperative tranquility reduces household conflict, improves communication, and lowers cortisol in children by measurable margins. And here's a detail you'll love. Japanese families often avoid heavy conversations at night because they believe emotional digestion is harder when the mind is tired. Instead, evenings are reserved for quiet bonding, bathing, tidying, reading, preparing clothes for the next day, all low-friction tasks that create what psychologists refer to as a predictability scaffold, stabilizing the brain before sleep. Western culture treats evenings like downtime. Japan treats it like a recovery protocol. And when you adopt even a fraction of this, dimming lights, lowering volume, cutting digital stimulation, doing a small calming ritual like chamomile tea or a 5-minute cleanup, you start sleeping better, thinking better, and reacting to life with more grace. The habit isn't about doing less. It's about unburdening your mind before tomorrow arrives. 8. The habit of multi-stage cleaning. The Japanese method that prevents mess before it exists. Most people clean reactively. Something gets dirty, then they decide to deal with it. But in Japan, households use a brilliant system known as danshari cycle maintenance, a preventative cleaning philosophy that keeps mess from ever forming in the first place. And let me tell you something that will genuinely shift your perspective. Japanese cleaning isn't about effort, it's about timing. Studies from 2021, tracking 500 Japanese households, revealed something shocking. Because cleaning is distributed into micro-intervals across the day, the average Japanese adult spends 38% less total time cleaning per week than Western counterparts, even though their homes appear significantly tidier. How? By breaking cleaning into 3 stages: immediate, interval, and deep reset. Immediate cleaning tackles micro-tasks that take less than 60 seconds, wiping a counter right after use, rinsing dishes before food dries, sweeping small debris before it spreads. Interval cleaning occurs during natural pauses, waiting for rice to cook, waiting for water to boil, waiting for laundry to finish. These tiny pockets of time accumulate into nearly 3 extra hours of cleaning per week, without ever feeling like chores. Then comes the deep reset. Once weekly, the home undergoes a structured refresh, not because it's dirty, but to prevent dirt accumulation entirely. But here's the genius insight almost nobody outside Japan understands. Micro-cleaning isn't about perfection. It's about maintaining flow. When your environment requires no major resets, your brain remains uninterrupted, cognitive clutter drops, and decision fatigue nearly disappears. Your home becomes a smooth system with low resistance, where tasks don't pile up and overwhelm you. Japanese psychologists call this environmental momentum, the idea that a tidy space accelerates productive behavior, while a cluttered one slows everything, including your mood, your energy, and your ability to focus. Try this habit even lightly. Clean for 30 seconds whenever you transition between tasks. You'll notice something profound. Your home stays effortlessly tidy. Your stress drops. Your motivation rises, and cleaning stops being an event. It becomes a lifestyle that supports every other part of your life. 7. The habit of anticipatory kindness, Japan's invisible system of social smoothness. What most people fail to understand about Japanese kindness is that it isn't reactive. It's predictive. And when I say predictive, I mean people in Japan have trained themselves to read microsignals, environmental patterns, and social dynamics with the precision of behavioral scientists, all for the sake of preventing stress before it even appears. This habit is called omoyari, and it's so deeply embedded into daily life that many Japanese don't even realize they're practicing something the rest of the world considers remarkable. Imagine living in a society where people move aside before you need to ask, where cashiers tilt your coins toward your hand so you never fumble, where commuters angle their umbrellas away from you without breaking stride, where strangers preemptively guide lost tourists before confusion becomes panic. This isn't niceness, it's environmental intelligence. A 2022 study from Keio University found that Japanese adults scored significantly higher on preemptive social cognition, meaning they don't just react to others' needs, they foresee them. And here's the part almost nobody talks about. Practicing anticipatory kindness doesn't merely help others. It dramatically reduces your stress. When your mind is trained to observe the world with softness instead of defensiveness, your amygdala, the part of your brain responsible for threat detection, stays quieter, reducing cortisol spikes by up to 18% in daily interactions. That means fewer emotional outbursts, fewer misunderstandings, fewer moments where you feel overwhelmed by other people's behavior. Japanese children start learning this habit as early as kindergarten, where they're taught to notice subtle cues like hesitation, discomfort, or confusion in classmates. Over time, this becomes second nature. And when enough people practice it, it creates what sociologists call a low-friction society, a world where interactions flow smoothly instead of grinding with conflict. If you try this habit, even slightly paying attention to tiny needs before they're expressed, you'll notice something remarkable happen. People relax around you. Tension dissolves before it forms. Your relationships deepen, and you begin to walk through life with an ease most people spend decades chasing through therapy, productivity hacks, or self-help books. Because the truth is, empathy is not a feeling. It's a skill. And omoyari is the most refined version of that skill humanity has ever practiced. 6. The habit of quiet endurance, Japan's framework for staying calm under pressure. Most people hear the word gaman and think it's about bottling up emotions or pretending everything is fine, but that completely misunderstands the psychological sophistication behind this Japanese habit. Gaman is the art of enduring discomfort with dignity, not denial, not repression, but a concrete decision to remain steady until the moment passes and your logical mind regains control. In a world that glorifies emotional outbursts, hot takes, impulsive reactions, and immediate venting, gaman is essentially an internal governor for your nervous system, teaching you how to maintain composure in situations that would unravel most people. A 2021 Kyoto University study demonstrated that individuals who practiced gaman regularly showed 42% higher activation in the prefrontal cortex, the region responsible for long-term decision-making during stressful situations, meaning they were literally better at thinking clearly under pressure. But here's the part no one ever mentions. Gaman is not passive. It's strategic. It creates space for reflection instead of reaction, which is why it's often paired with hansei, the practice of thoughtful self-review. You endure the moment, and then you analyze it, not to blame yourself, but to understand your patterns and refine your future choices. That's why Japanese communities remain orderly during disasters, why commuters tolerate crowded trains without losing control, why workers show up consistently even under enormous pressure. It's not blind obedience, it's emotional mastery. Western culture often encourages immediate expression as a sign of authenticity, but the truth is uncontrolled expression can damage relationships, escalate stress, and lock you into patterns of impulsive behavior. Gaman teaches you to pause long enough for wisdom to catch up with emotion. And when you apply this habit in your own life, choosing to breathe instead of lash out, choosing to observe instead of react, you'll notice your anxiety shrink, your resilience grow, and your ability to handle life's unexpected challenges strengthen dramatically. The world doesn't get easier, you get sturdier, and that sturdiness becomes your quiet superpower. 5. The habit of aesthetic mindfulness, wabi-sabi, as a daily anti-anxiety tool. If there is one Japanese habit that can instantly lower your stress without needing a vacation, a life overhaul, or a 30-step self-care routine, it's the philosophical practice of wabi-sabi, the ability to recognize beauty in what is imperfect, incomplete, and constantly changing. And don't confuse this with minimalism or rustic decor. Wabi-sabi is not an aesthetic, it's a neurological reframing mechanism. The modern world bombards us with unrealistic standards: flawless skin, immaculate homes, hyper-organized lives, perfectly symmetrical spaces, algorithmically enhanced beauty. This constant exposure creates what psychologists call perfection fatigue, elevating anxiety levels and shrinking emotional resilience. But in Japan, wabi-sabi teaches something radically different. Flaws aren't failures, they're evidence of life. A crack in a tea bowl becomes part of its story. A worn wooden table gains character with each year. A handmade object is cherished precisely because of its irregularities. Research from the University of Tokyo in 2020 demonstrated that people exposed to natural asymmetry and organic textures had significantly lower amygdala activation, meaning their brains interpreted imperfection as soothing rather than stressful. That's why Japanese homes often incorporate raw materials, uneven pottery, weathered textiles, and soft lighting, not for design trends, but because these sensory cues literally calm the nervous system. But here's what makes wabi-sabi transformative. It doesn't just change how you see objects, it changes how you see yourself. When you stop demanding perfection from your surroundings, your relationships, and your progress, you soften your expectations and begin to appreciate the beauty in your own unfinished journey. You stop panicking over flaws. You stop comparing yourself to polished illusions. You stop expecting life to follow a straight line. Instead, you start noticing the richness in mistakes, the meaning in imperfections, and the subtle beauty in everyday wear and tear. And this mindset shift, this gentle acceptance, creates emotional spaciousness that most people never experience because they're too busy chasing some idealized version of existence. Wabi-sabi doesn't make your life easier. It makes your life real. And real is 1,000 times more peaceful than perfect. 4. The habit of entering nature as daily medicine. The biological precision of Japan's forest rituals. What most people don't realize about the Japanese practice of Shinrin-yoku, or forest bathing, is that it's not a poetic concept or a spiritual luxury. It is a biologically engineered reset protocol, backed by decades of rigorous scientific research. In the West, nature is often seen as a weekend treat, a scenic backdrop, or something you visit when life feels overwhelming. But in Japan, stepping into a forest is treated almost like a medical appointment, intentional, structured, and grounded in measurable physiological outcomes. And the data behind it is staggering. Researchers at Chiba University conducted over 60 field experiments across Japan's national forests and found that just 20 minutes of unhurried exposure to forest air reduced cortisol levels by up to 37%, lowered heart rate variability, and activated parasympathetic dominance, the state your body enters during deep healing. But the truly mind-blowing discovery came when scientists measured the impact of phytoncides, the natural antimicrobial oils released by trees. These compounds triggered a 52% increase in natural killer cell activity, boosting immune function for up to a week after a single session. That means walking in a forest doesn't just make you feel calmer, it fortifies your body's defenses in a way no supplement or meditation app can replicate. Yet here's the part people completely overlook. Shinrin-yoku is designed to be slow. There is no destination, no goal, no calorie burn target. Your senses, not your steps, do the healing. Japanese forest guides instruct participants to inhale deeply enough for the scent of cedar and cypress to coat the lungs, to let their eyes soften until shades of green resync brainwave frequency into alpha patterns, and to walk slowly enough that the soil's texture becomes part of the experience rather than something beneath it. And modern neuroscience supports this approach. Slow sensory immersion rewires default mode network activity, reducing rumination and enhancing creative problem solving. Even if you don't have access to a Japanese forest, the principle still applies. Nature is not decoration. It is a biological nutrient. A daily 10-15-minute walk in a park, beneath a row of trees, or through any natural space without headphones, and without urgency can recalibrate your nervous system in a way that artificial relaxation never will. Shinrin-yoku is not escapism, it's maintenance. It's the human body remembering its original operating environment. And when you make even a small version of this a habit, you don't just feel better, you become measurably harder to stress, slower to anger, quicker to recover, and more connected to your own internal rhythm than you've been in years. 3. The habit of eating for longevity. Japan's precision-based approach to metabolic control. If you want to understand why Japan consistently ranks among the world's longest living nations, you need to understand the cultural discipline behind hara hachibu, the Okinawan habit of eating until you are just 80% full. And let me tell you something that will shock you. This habit has nothing to do with dieting, restraint, or depriving yourself. It is a metabolic strategy refined over centuries based on the observation that the gap between enough and too much determines the speed at which the body ages. Western eating habits are built around abundance, large plates, large portions, and the idea that finishing your meal means eating until you cannot take another bite. But in Okinawa, one of the world's blue zones, elders sit down to meals with a completely different internal script. They slow their pace. They pay attention to subtle fullness cues. They stop eating while their stomach wants a little more, knowing the sensation of true fullness will arrive 15, 20 minutes later. And modern research confirms this ancient wisdom. Studies from Japan's National Institute of Health have shown that individuals practicing hara hachibu consume 11–14% fewer total calories, reduce oxidative stress markers, lower inflammation, and improve metabolic flexibility, meaning the body can shift between burning glucose and fat with far greater efficiency. But here's the deeper insight that almost nobody talks about. Hara hachibu trains the brain, not the stomach. It rewires the dopamine reward system so that satisfaction comes from awareness rather than excess. Over time, the body stops craving the overstimulation of overeating and begins to prefer balance. And as a result, everything stabilizes: energy levels, mood regulation, digestion, and weight. Another fascinating detail: Okinawan elders recite a small phrase before eating, hara hachibu, as a form of cognitive priming. That verbal cue activates prefrontal decision-making and reduces the likelihood of unconscious overeating. And this works across cultures. People who pause before eating and set even a simple intention consume fewer calories and report higher meal satisfaction. Imagine how different your relationship with food would be if you stopped eating at comfortable instead of stuffed, if you let meals end before discomfort began, if you treated appetite as a signal rather than a command. Hara hachibu is not about restriction, it is about mastery. It turns eating into a conscious act rather than an autopilot behavior, and it gives you what most modern diets fail to give: a sense of calm around food that follows you long after the meal ends. 2. The habit of knowing your why, ikigai, as a daily alignment system, not a life purpose quest. One of the biggest misconceptions about ikigai in the West is that it's treated like some mystical treasure you're supposed to discover during a midlife crisis, a single, life-defining purpose that suddenly appears and explains why you were born. But in Japan, ikigai is nothing like that. It isn't a mystical destiny. It isn't a career. It isn't a calling you spend decades searching for. Ikigai is a daily directional habit, a practice of aligning even the smallest actions with something that gives you a sense of meaning, momentum, and psychological coherence. And this difference in interpretation is enormous, so enormous that it explains why Japanese people report some of the highest life satisfaction scores, despite long work hours, aging populations, and urban density. They do not wait for a big purpose. They practice micro-purpose, embedding meaning into routine moments. A 2021 longitudinal study from Tohoku University tracked over 43,000 adults and found that people who expressed having even a small, actionable sense of purpose, like tending a garden, walking a neighbor's dog, perfecting a hobby, caring for grandchildren, or volunteering, showed a 16% lower risk of mortality, reduced cardiovascular incidence, better sleep quality, and significantly lower depression rates. What shocked researchers wasn't that ikigai improved health. It was how little was required for the benefits to appear. Just 10-15 minutes a day spent on something that makes you feel useful, creative, connected, or curious is enough to shift your neurochemistry. But here is the part no one talks about. Ikigai is self-generated. It grows from action, not introspection. Japanese elders say, "You don't find ikigai, you feed it," meaning evolves. Skills evolve, values evolve, and your ikigai adapts with you. This is why Japanese culture places emphasis on lifelong hobbies: calligraphy, carpentry, fishing, pottery, flower arranging, instrument playing, because stable activities become emotional anchors that remain even as careers change, children grow, and circumstances shift. Ikigai also protects against modern anxiety because it prevents identity from being tied exclusively to productivity or external validation. Instead of thinking, "What big thing am I meant to do with my life?" the Japanese approach is, "What small thing can I do today that makes life feel meaningful?" That shift from existential pressure to daily orientation is psychologically liberating. It pulls you out of the fog of uncertainty and grounds you in continuous forward motion. And when you practice this consistently, something extraordinary happens. Your life stops feeling accidental. Your choices feel coherent. You begin waking with direction instead of dread. Purpose becomes a habit, not an achievement. And that changes everything. 1. The habit of continuous micro-improvement kaizen as a lifelong transformation engine. If there is one Japanese habit with the power to quietly rebuild a life from the inside out, one principle that requires almost no effort yet produces results so dramatic people mistake it for talent or luck, it is kaizen, the discipline of making extremely small improvements consistently over long periods of time. Most people try to change their lives through massive promises, grand overhauls, New Year resolutions, 90-day challenges, or sudden transformations that collapse under their own weight. But Kaizen bypasses all of that by working directly with human neurology. It uses the brain's preference for low-threat, low-resistance tasks to create momentum that never burns out. In the 1970s and 80s, Toyota proved to the world that micro-adjustments, sometimes as small as moving a tool 2 inches or shaving a second off a repetitive motion, could lead to global domination in manufacturing efficiency. But the secret wasn't the mechanics. It was the psychology. Workers were empowered to identify microscopic inefficiencies every single day. Those tiny refinements compounded into astonishing performance gains. Neuroscientists later confirmed why this works. Improvements under 1–2% do not trigger the brain's defense mechanisms, meaning you bypass fear, procrastination, self-sabotage, and overwhelm. You don't need motivation. You don't need discipline. You only need consistency. Kaizen works because tiny actions rewrite identity. If you read 1 page a day, you become someone who reads. If you walk 2 minutes a day, you become someone who exercises. If you declutter a single drawer item, you become someone who takes care of their environment. And once identity shifts, behavior becomes effortless. This is why Japanese companies, schools, and households all bake kaizen into daily routines, because the most powerful change is the one so small your brain doesn't fight it. But here is the element people never realize. Kaizen eliminates the concept of failure. If your goal is 1% better, there is no "I ruined it," no "I'll start again Monday," no collapse. You simply continue the next day. That psychological safety allows people to build habits that last decades instead of weeks. And over a long enough timeline, Kaizen produces transformations so profound they look like miracles. Health improves, careers accelerate, relationships strengthen, creativity expands, chaos dissolves into manageable increments. And then one day you look back and realize something breathtaking. The small things were never small. They were the blueprint of a completely different life. Kaizen doesn't demand greatness, it manufactures it. Let me leave you with something most people never realize until it's too late. Your life doesn't fall apart in big moments. It drifts off course through tiny habits you never questioned. And in the exact same way, your life doesn't improve through massive transformations. It improves through microscopic shifts, repeated consistently. The very habits Japan mastered long before the rest of the world even noticed. If even one of these home hacks sparked something in you, imagine what happens when you apply 5 or all 10. Your days get smoother, your stress drops, your environment becomes a tool instead of a trap, and slowly, almost quietly, you become someone whose life feels intentional instead of overwhelming. But here's the part that matters most. Your future self is already waiting for you to start. These habits cost nothing. They require no special talent. You don't need a new house, new equipment, or a new lifestyle. You just need one tiny shift repeated today, and then again tomorrow. That's how Japan built a culture of longevity, calm, and efficiency, not through perfection, but through consistency. If you want a part 2 with 10 more Japanese habits almost no one outside the country knows, tell me in the comments. And if this resonated with you even a little, make sure you're here for the next video, because once you unlock these small changes, everything in your life begins to move differently. Your environment shapes you. Now it's time to shape it back.